Good morning, and of course, this is Rise and Shine coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State. It's been quite a refreshing weekend, and we do like to believe that you had fun, you were refreshed, you took out time to socialize, meet family, friends, and loved ones, have a good time, and get that quality relaxation your body so needed to be able to function and kickstart this very new week. My name is Francis Oyima Edet, and I have the adorable.
Good morning, Africa. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Akwa Ibom State. Beautiful Monday morning from where we sit. And I do hope that your side is also bright. Of course, my name is Uyai Anekan, and I am thankful to be here this morning. Do well to follow us across all social media platforms so we keep the conversation going. And all that's available at spectrumtv.ng. Good morning, and thanks for joining us once again.
Well, it's indeed a very beautiful day. I mean, today we are beginning to count down to the end of the month of July. I can't believe it's already 17th, and we have just a few days left, and July will be over. And before you know it, the Ember months will be here. But I know that with the way the rains are falling, with the way things are going, apart from the warning from, the relevant flood disaster NEMA and other relevant government agencies. And I know that government are taking notice, probably the state government. And last week we had the state governors meeting with the representative of NEMA as a way of making sure that we are proactive this time so that we don't get to witness the kind of flood. Did you have fun? How did you relax? How did you enjoy the weekend?
Well, I had a long weekend, very long weekend. I think that's how to summarize it. And as you can see, cats caught my voice. So please, my darlings, you manage with me this morning, right? All right, of course. But my weekend was great. Weddings, social functions, and all of that.
Weddings. Well, it's getting to the months where everybody wants to get married, and literally you get to see things on social media like, please, you people should not marry my husband. You should not marry my wife. This one,
Let the
everybody.
singles breathe.
Please. You've always been breathing, you'll always be breathing. But then let's go to the point of the day. A lot
Of
has
course.
happened within the course of the week from our very own president, Ahmed Bola Tinubu, going for the first time to the AU gathering. And as the chairman of the ECOWAS, I mean, a lot was expected and a lot has happened, particularly from the president's maiden report. And the reactions from Nigeria is just, I don't know how to frame it, but I think a lot of people a lot of people are on the different sidelines, and we have to take snippets of what the president's statement has been. We will talk from today till thy kingdom come, because a lot has been enshrined. But part of the things that stood out for me, and one that has generated reactions from Nigerians, is the president restating the need for leaders in African continent to have the need for good governance, the need for people to not live in poverty, the need for the fight of enemies of the state, enemies of the people are taken out completely or completely annihilated, so that Nigerians and other African countries can get to have a breathing space for development to take place. I also like the fact that the president has also spoken about coup d'etat in the African region, where militaries are taking over democratically elected government, and then of course it would take like forever for the transition to from military back to democracy to take place, as it is being battled across some of the countries in Africa right now.
Well, that's like a backgrounder to a major story, but a quick run to what we have as our first story this morning. We are looking at the fact that the federal government has released the official portrait, most Nigerians, and has clamored a lot of reactions. Um, First of all, Nigerians didn't see this coming because the question is where and across social media platforms, the biggest story, the biggest question there is where are we going to hang the portrait of the First Lady? Because if we take our minds back, well, some Nigerians say in the dispensation of former President Muhammadu Buhari, he did not have a First Lady. But then we go back to former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, I don't think there was an unveiling of the official portrait of the First Lady. So this is more like we are now looking at um, some pseudo authority, fourth man in the fire of power in the country as of now. But anyway, that there we have it, the official portrait of the First Lady of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Oluremi Tinubu. What are your thoughts with this, Francis? I know Nigerians are not even finding it funny.
Well, it's I would start from the part of Nigerians who believe there's always a first time for everything to be done. And like you rightly stated, the era of the outgone president, Muhammadu Buhari, it always started out saying the place of the woman is in the kitchen and the other room. Of course, that was a statement that was widely criticized across quarters because it definitely put the woman in the wrong perspective, regardless of what the wife was able to achieve within his tenure and within her stay as the First Lady of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And of course, in the time when we are talking about equality, when we are talking about equal representation of women in the political space, in the organized private sector, in the corporate environment, a lot of persons say, well, maybe the president is taking a step to reaffirm his standpoint that, his government will prioritize issues of gender equality, gender equity, and of course the empowerment of the girl child across borders. So many people are of that opinion that perhaps this is a step the president is taking to say, you know what, my wife is as equally important as I am to the generality of Nigeria. And so people need to understand that. That is one argument. The second one could be if you look at the long list of the president's wife and the different political achievements she has been able to attain herself, she's also a very strong figure. Recall just after the National Assemblies were inaugurated, a representative from the House of Reps went to pay her a courtesy visit to appreciate her for the role she played in their emergence. And that's to tell you that she also has some sort of an influence as far as politics is concerned. Okay. To place the question of where we are going to hang her picture on the wall is concerned, I think Nigeria has never been open to having the president and the first lady before the governor. So definitely maybe that picture is just going to be functional at the Aso Villa.
Functional at the Aso Villa. So we might not be seeing it walking into offices and the likes. But I like, an angle you came in from. It could be an air of inclusion for women in his administration. So we have the face of the First Lady representing the fact that in this government, women are going to be carried along. I think that that's a safe explanation to take. Thank you, Francis, for that one. Because I hope Nigerians can buy that also, because the comments are not giving at all. But let's move to the AU summit that was held. Of course, we saw African heads of state and government have declaring their commitment to advance integration and development and cooperation within the continent. Now, the leaders representing the Bureau of the Assembly of the African Union, AU, and chairpersons of the 8 regional economic communities, REC, AU in Nairobi, Kenya, on Sunday, with the adoption of a draft declaration.
Now, the meeting chaired by President Azali Assoumani of Comoros and the chairperson of the African Union was attended by, President Bola Tinubu of Nigeria and the chairperson of ECOWAS, as well as the president of Kenya, Egypt, Gabon, Djibouti, Libya, Senegal, and DR Congo. The leaders expressed their support for initiative aimed at boosting connectivity and tourism within the African, let me pause here, e-visa facilitation, ease of movement across, the different continent, and of course, reaffirming their commitment to work together and then to boost tourism. Now, that is one sector that has not been dealt with, that has not been invested in. That's one sector that is still lacking the kind of political will to drive the kinds of investment that could open up the sector. If we come back to Nigeria, literally across the respective states, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tourist sites that if developed, invested in, can actually open the respective state open, for tourists to come in. And these tourists coming in would actually be a means of revenue generation. So for me, it's a step taken in the right direction. And many experts in the field, I had a conversation with an expert just yesterday after going through this, and he said, well, it is one thing for the AU leaders to actually decide to prioritize investment into the tourism sector, but then will there be implementation when they return to their respective country? Yes, at the AU summit, they have all given their voice, they've all given their consent. They're going to focus on this. But going back to their country, how much of the implementation is going to happen? How much of the investment are they going to do to show that they're actually prioritizing the area? Because for tourism, as far as we're concerned, as far as tourism is concerned, it's capital intensive, and it requires a whole properly, and then mechanisms put in place so that people can now see this place as what their time and their experiences, which of course will now bring in the required revenue. But without those investments being done or taken into consideration, things might not just work out. It will just be a matter of verbal confirmation and setting priorities.
Of course, we also see ratification on the protocol of free movement of persons to effectively support the African continental free trade. Now, even from the ECOWAS summit that was held last week, this is something that is very important on the table. We are trying to see how Africans can move around within Africa without a lot of encumbrances, how Africans can do business within Africa without some of the strains. Now, we also see, for instance, that in Lagos, there is a difficulty in, trading within and among some, this same issue being raised on the table. It means that it calls for serious attention. As Africa, we need to collectively put our resources together and move our people forward. And we are coming into a dispensation where we are having conversations of let us draft and craft solutions for African problems and issues by Africans living in Africa, because we are the ones that understand the political architecture, we understand our security defects and all of that. They want Africans within Africa to begin to think of initiatives on how to move us forward. So I think this AU summit was very instructive. And then again, we're also looking at the part that our president had to play and some of the things that he called out during the AU meeting. Of course, we also had him suffering. So, whilst he gave his speech during the AU meeting, this is something that he really, really hammered on. Like, giving his speech also during the ECOWAS meeting, he had said it is time for Africa to rise and it's time for us to look inwards. So I think these are some of the things that we are looking at. And the fact that we have the African Union leaders coming together to say collectively we are going to unite to make sure that we integrate and work out ways to bring about prosperity for the region, then it is actually good that we are seeing our leaders put us on a projectile that can move us forward as a continent.
Well, definitely. As far as the African continent is concerned, when you're talking about growth, you're talking about development, you're talking about, the continent moving out of its poverty index, moving out of, the situation we are economically, it comes down to the very big question of leadership. It boils down to the problem that has always been associated with Africans' backwardness as far as the continent is concerned. If you place Africa side by side with other continents of the world, you look at the things that have happened. Now, the next snippet coming from Ahmed Bola Tinubu says the lessons of the past few years has taught the continent that the world economy can be disrupted in ways that halt progress and invite downturn. Nations can suddenly find themselves in that situation if they choose to be passive observers of their fate. And there's another snippet from the Ahmed Bola Tinubu speech at the AU. And then coming down to these ones, lessons of the past few years. We saw what happened during the COVID-19 pandemic. We saw businesses shutting down. We saw most countries in Africa going into debt burdens, going into extra borrowing, going more downward as far as the economy was concerned. And many are yet to even come out of the post-COVID-19 as far as the post-COVID-19 analysis of the economy of the respective country is concerned. But the big question is, has the continent, have our leaders learned the lessons that should have been learned from the, the downturn that came as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic? The answer to that, many analysts would say no, because it seems our leaders are still moving in the same direction. Take, for instance, how we prioritize our economy. There would have been a change to how we invest in our, economy. There would have been a change to the cost of governance, which of course we are not seeing that happen. So when you put that side by side and then put it side by side with the words of Ahmed Bola Tinubu, it seems it's just about mere professions of the presidency. Then, and of course, the president went further to say that such passivity does not commend itself to him. And he said, I will not listen to it, neither should any African. The challenges we face mean that governance will be difficult. Now, to this snippet, the president was talking about the fact that there seemed to be a drive from, Western countries to come over and take some parts of Africa for themselves. We've seen different, foreign countries coming into Africa to look for different kinds of relations, the kind of slavery or oppression or intimidation. So him coming out to say that doesn't apply to him, and of course other African countries or leaders should not, adhere to such mindset. Yes, taken in the right direction. But then for you to be able to take a firm stand, for you to be able to take a firm decision, you need to first fix your house. You need to put your house in order. And if you don't put your house in order, it means you'll always be running back to somebody to borrow. And once you borrow from somebody, it definitely puts you at the mercy of that person. So yes, the African leaders have the political will to actually implement the things that they have highlighted are the problems of the continent.
Of course, because we must actually go beyond just having conversations and meetings. The question will usually be, we've had some of these meetings prior to this time. Implementation is a big question when we come to African democracy. Some of the bullet points that have been raised by the different heads of state under the African Union, and that's a very big question. But when we see the presence of the likes of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, does this mean that we are going to begin to experience a change as enunciated by the president? Now, we're also looking at the fact that there is a need to advance the continent towards peace and prosperity. Let's talk about the insecurity and the coups that have ridden some parts of Africa, some foreign countries, some Western countries that are alleged to be using this insecurity to try and foster their presence within, African borders. For instance, Russia is part of those, is under part of those allegations. Like, for instance, in other parts of Africa, for that matter. So these are things that needs to be looked into squarely. And President Bola Tinubu seems to be a relevant voice within the African Union and ECOWAS space, as we see. Of course, he has said that we need to begin to develop less and less reliance on dependence on Western energy in terms of certain things in the country. Not that we are not going to promote bilateral relationships, but we must know where the lines must be drawn. So this in the overall is in the good of the African continent, but willpower to implement.
Well, it's in the overall interest of the African continent. Mali is currently suffering a worse setback. Burkina Faso is still there, and we've had other African countries following in the line. I mean, as far as the sub-Saharan region is concerned, we are having different spaces of insecurity. Ghana is currently having challenges because it wouldn't allow people from Burkina Faso and other countries to come in for fear of a jihadist movement, spinning up from their country. And of course, this all boils down to one thing: insecurity. It all boils down to armed military or armed militias, as the case may be. It all boils down to non-state actors who are, using reference back to conversations we've had with security experts, former military personnel, have said, as far as, the insecurity is concerned in any given society, in any given country, there are people who are benefiting from it. So if the government actually wants to fight insecurity, they first need to fish out who are those who are involved in it, who are those benefiting from the insecurity fight, and then deal extensively, decisively with them. When the government is able to deal with those class of people, which of course they have the necessary tools at its disposal to fish out these kinds of persons, then we will begin to see a lot changes coming up. Yes, people might argue that there are those allegations that there are collaborations between, people in Nigeria and people outside the shores of Nigeria. But then, as they always say, in the proverbial saying that it is only the house rat that calls the bush rat to the house for a feast before the bush rat comes in. So if people in Nigeria who are greedy are not willing to act with, people outside the country who do not love Nigeria, who do not want its peace and stability, then we never will have peace. But when we have people in Nigeria who are doing this kinds of business become more patriotic and then understand that the peace and stability of the country would always actually be to the overall benefit of every Nigerian, and then shun this, that the non-state actors outside the shores of Nigeria will not find anybody to collaborate. Because without this collaboration, there is no way you could have, smooth operations of this person. So it goes down to properly funding the Nigerian military. It goes down to properly, putting our armed forces in the right perspective, giving them the right equipment to work with, the right ammunitions, the right firepower. It goes down to the right training and retraining of the personnel. It goes down to the right welfare packages to ensure that these people are properly taken care of. It goes down to even insurances to make them understand that, okay, even when your life is over in the field of, battle, or while you're protecting the sovereignty of Nigeria, your family, your children will well be taken care of. So when these things are put in place, then we will get to understand that the Nigerian government is ready to fight insecurity. I mean, we've heard comments and, video footages and some things flying over once in a while of the army personnel telling you we don't have the kind of weapon that the militants have. We don't have the kind of weapons that, the non-state actors have, the Boko Haram insurgency, the ISWAP, and of course, all of those, the bandits. So if a military personnel does not have, you are supposed to be the one protecting the sovereignty of the nation's higher than an AK-47. You're not going to stand and watch. I mean, yes, you are trained to take firepower and then engage, but how much of engaging can you do when you obviously know the firepower the other person has is way above yours? So it goes down to investing in these things. And when we begin to see those actions, of course, President Bola Tinubu has stated that he's going to invest in, taking care of the security. So we get to watch and see the implementation. When we see the implementation, we will see the result. When we see the result, then we know that the country is ready to move forward.
Just to land on some more strong points that the president raised during this AU meeting. Now, this one is more like a subtle note of warning to the rest of the world. Now, he said, whoever the new scramblers are for the energy of our continent, he said, Africa may be old, but our spirit is new and it is strong. Now, he said the bad that took place in the past must stay there. Now, we also see that maybe in the next couple of years, President Tinubu will be one person that will be given to have given some of the best quotes on nationhood and governance, because some of these things are very instructive. Then again, we see there's something here that he said that stands out. The fullness of the integration we seek will elude us as long as several of our nations stand in the midst of violence and war. There is a greater percentage of Africa that is embroiled in one, war or crisis than the ones that are not. And it's time to really look into these. And when we talk about trade and commerce, we're also looking about the fact that we're talking about goods and services that can improve lives within Africa. Now, the trade and commerce of these nations suffer if destruction and disorder, because people cannot come from other nations and invest when there is insecurity and destruction on rampage. So we do hope that with this, there's going to be a lot more work done within the space, as it were. But we just let that particular story this week also, and several other events. And we are seeing that today the House of Reps will be screening service chiefs.
Well, the Senate has done its part. Now is the time for the House of Reps. Well, definitely a lot of Nigerians expect it's still going to be a clean slate for all the service chief. I mean, after the upper chamber has done their job, We don't see a difference coming from the lower chamber of the National Assembly. But be that as it may, a lot of expectation is coming on the sides of Nigerians. Yes, we got the nominations, we got the service chief directive being given by the president for them to work immediately, and then of course the retiring of armed forces are concerned. And now we're having them being screened and officially so by the National Assembly. The expectations and the mindset of Nigerians are high. We know the acting Inspector General of Police, for instance, Igbetokun, had been talking tough as far as policing in Nigeria is concerned. He's also taken some, immediate actions in terms of reshuffling the leaderships and commands and formations of the Nigerian police force, just like we've seen in the Nigerian military and other armed forces and other service chiefs do. So Nigerians expect, yes, once the screening and the approval has been given by the National Assembly, this person should be done. Nigerians want to see the result, not just mere talk, not just mere promises made on the part of the service chief, but very visible actions in terms of reduction in the crime rate, in terms of reduction in the kidnapping and murdering of Nigerians, in terms of fighting the insurgents to a standstill, in terms of weeding out this criminal element. All of this will go a long way to actually restoring confidence. And like President Ahmed Bola Tinubu has said, if we have to drive investment back, must know that yes, once I get into Nigeria, apart from the harmonization of the foreign exchange rate and all of those other desire, and then of course job opportunities will come and other beautiful things would come alongside with it.
Well, it's expected that today the service chiefs will face the ad hoc committee of the House of Representatives for their screening. Now, recall that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had last week written to the Speaker, Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, requesting the House to screen the appointees following the immediate retirement of the former service chiefs, the ex-Inspector General of Police and ex-Controller General of the Nigeria Customs Service on June 19. Now, for that purpose, the Speaker Abbas set up the committee headed by the chairman of the Committee on Defense in the 9th House, representing Rep. Babajimi Benson, APC Lagos. Now, Abbas also announced all the 8 principal officers of the House from the majority and minority parties as part of the ad hoc committee. Now, these principal officers from the majority caucus include Professor Julius Imo, of course, a list of different people there. Now, also minority leaders, Kingsley Chinda, PDP Rivers, Deputy Minority Whip, all of them make up that particular committee. Of course, these new service chiefs are billed to be there at the events. Of course, we see Chief of Air Staff, Vice Marshal H.B. Abubakar to be screened, Chief of Naval Staff, Rear Admiral E. Chief of Defense Staff, General C.G. Musa, of course, Major General C.G. Musa, I beg your pardon. These are the people that will be screened. Of course, fingers crossed for the details that the ad hoc committee will be giving us this Monday with regards to this particular screening.
Well, definitely.
Of course, this also still remains, it takes the whole conversation and fingers crossed with ministerial list. It seems for some funny reason that ministerial list is of when that list should come out.
Well, I think Nigerians at this point have not paid more attention to the list anymore because as a matter of fact, a lot of people had been expecting that probably before now, President Ahmed Bola Tinubu would have sent his list over. But then, I mean, as long as the president is still within his timeline and the time is yet to be, elapsed, then I think we still have to keep our fingers crossed. Recall last week there were speculations and different names flying across, different social media platforms of those that have been thinking. The presidency has not come out to say, yes, these are the people. I recall we were told some time back by the presidency, this list of people are actually undergoing screening by the relevant security agencies before being actually forwarded. And the argument is that maybe Ahmed Bola Tinubu is not ready to just put out a list of people, and then take out somebody just like it happened within the rank and file. It does come out. Ahmed Bola Tinubu's
worth the
list,
wait.
yes, will be worth the wait, definitely.
All right. At this point, Mary Joseph is on standby to bring us the news brief, and we will take that this morning when we return. There's a lot more conversations we'll be bringing you on Rise and Shine.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on Channel 421 on StarTimes to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories and how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police power with the president and stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian Police Force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian Police Force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters counsel is leading the evidence in as cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
As of state and government, Secretary General, delegates.
Voting for Spectrum TV to recover 45 seats.
That. We begin our morning brief with President Tinubu, who has announced plans to strengthen the economic community of West African states ECOWAS. Tinubu said Africa cannot attain integration and prosperity while African language in pain and anguish. The president in his maiden address reaffirmed Africa's unity and strength while strongly rejecting the notion of a new scramble for the continent. Tinubu warned that plundering and exploitation of the continent should remain in the past and never be repeated. He also announced plans to strengthen the economic community of West African states ECOWAS, stand by force to bolster coups and combat terrorism in the sub-region. Away from that, the upper legislative chamber was reacting to reports in some online news outlets that the sum of 70 billion naira was parted into the supplementary budget as a gift from the executive arm of government. In a statement issued by the chairman, Senate Committee on Media and Public Affairs, Senator Yemi Adaromodu, and made available to newsmen in Abuja, he wondered how the purveyors arrived at such report, stating that passing laws was exclusive to lawmakers, hence they needed no gift from the executive arm of government before doing their works. And from the financial sector, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has approved a new corporate governance code. Apex Bank disclosed these in a 96-page circular posted on its website. According to the circular signed by Chibuza Efobi, the Financial Policy and Regulation Department Director, emphasized that only one member of an extended family can be CEO, MD, Chairman, or Executive Director at any time. Recall that CBN had said bank executives could only serve a cumulative tenure of 20 years across the banking sector. However, CBN's new regulation slashed the tenure of bank's managing director to a maximum of 12 years. CBN fixed August 1st, 2023 as the commencement date for the implementation of the new regulation. On the foreign scene, Russian President Vladimir Putin has not yet said if Russia would renew the deal under which Moscow allowed Ukraine to ship its grain across the Black Sea. The deal, brokered by the United Nations and Turkey, signed by Moscow and Kyiv in July 2022, established a protected sea corridor allowing Ukraine's agricultural goods to reach global markets, set to expire today. Russia, however, says obstacles to its own exports remain and has threatened to pull out of the grain deal over the issue. We move to sports, where Carlos Alcaraz defeated seven-time champion Novak Djokovic to claim his first Wimbledon title yesterday, shattering the Serb's dream of a record-equaling 24th Grand Slam crown. World number one Alcaraz recovered from dropping the first set and 70-year-old Spaniard following his US Open title last year, as he became Wimbledon's third youngest men's champion. Still in sports, Nigerian world record holder Tobi Amosu overcame a slow start to claim victory in the 100 meters hurdles event at the Silesia Diamond League in Poland, sprinting to a season's best of 12 minutes 34 seconds that equaled the meeting record in Chazan, Poland. And that's it on our news brief this morning. Back to Uyai and Yekend for the rest of Rise and Shine. Stay with us.
Government, Secretary General,
This was the Lagos voting for Spectrum TV to recover from the lapses taken to county.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on Star Times to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories and how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Rise and Shine, and we're coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. Of course, we've just heard the news brief, information of things happening around the globe. Of course, on Rise and Shine this morning, we've already had certain conversations, and just to give you a rundown, the federal government has released the official portrait of the First Lady of the Federal Republic, Senator Oluremi Tinubu. We also saw the fact that African leaders during the AU meeting reaffirmed their commitment to integrate and develop Africa. Also, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu during the AU meeting said Africa cannot achieve integration, prosperity while people suffer. Today is Monday, and the House of Representatives will be screening service chiefs. These and more are some of the conversations we've had this morning. To catch up on all that, follow us across all social media platforms. If you need to get on the go this Monday morning, we are currently live on YouTube and on Facebook. At this point, we go straight up to Daily Spotlight, where we bring you information from the front pages of our national dailies.
Well, it's still Rise and Shine. Of course, it's time for us to take you around the different newspaper headline. And we're starting this morning with the Nigerian Tribune. The Nigerian Tribune is our first start. On the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning, the writer says Tinubu's cabinet supporters worry over inclusion of ex-governors. Tinubu's cabinet supporters worry over inclusion of ex-governors. That's the writer. Then of course you find as an appendage that says it may cause Governor Godswill, son of ex-CGN, taped as AGF battle for slots rages in Nasarawa, other states. You can find that on page 23 of the Nigerian Tribune. Petrol subsidy removal suspends in states over palliative. That's on page 22 of the Nigerian Tribune. Still on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, there can be military solution to Northwest crisis, Shetima. That's coming from the Vice President, says Tinubu to unveil new secret. That is on page 22 of the Nigerian Tribune. And of course, on insecurity, 4 killed, 11 injured in Lagos, Ibadan. Okay, and of course, you can find that on page 27. NERC to engage stakeholders over discos requires for tariff procurement of bulletproof exotic vehicles by National Assembly. Others, you can find that on page 2 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
All right, moving on from Nigerian Tribune, let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. Big story on the Punch says controversy over alleged resignation of APC Chair Adamu. We also see here Damu allegedly forced to resign 2 days before NEC meeting. Party spokesperson Mom. NWC member, other sources divided over resignation. Kyari may chair NWC meeting. IG withdraws mobile policemen from ex-governors, ministers, and VIPs. Page 2. All right, that's a big move. We also see here NERC may okay tariff hike as electricity subsidy hits 2.8 trillion naira. Anger as Senate defends 70 billion naira palliative for lawmakers. Resist news scramble for Africa. Report. Page 21 is where we can find details. NDLEA nabs Europe-bound undergraduate and Lagos lawyer with drugs. Page 4 and 5 is where you can find details. World Bank links Lagos building collapse to poor regulation. Page 26, and that's all we have on the front page of the Punch.
Well, we head back to the Vanguard newspaper this morning. On the front page of the Vanguard newspaper, you would find very interesting stories there. The kicker is a minimum wage to empower states to pay new wage. That's on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. You can also find Naira hits new low at 820 Naira per dollar as Forex supply gap persists. And that's on that's on page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper. Still on the front page of the Vanguard, adulterated aviation fuel floods Lagos, Kano, Missouri to resign. That's on page 11 of the Vanguard newspaper. Still on the front page, electricity tariff, NERC, 11 discos set for fresh public hearing. That's on page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper, while page 10 has C-Rep to Akpabio Abbas. Drop plan to spend 110 billion naira on bulletproof cars. And of course, before we wrap up on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper this morning, insurgency, military might alone can solve crisis in Northeast. Vice President Shatima, military might alone can't solve crisis in Northeast. And of course, Tinubu affirms Africa's unity, warns against news scramble for continent. Those you can find on the page 8 and page 9 respectively. While to wrap up on the front page of Vanguard, illegal firearms charge, lawyers, activists demand Emefiele's immediate release. That's on page 27 of the Vanguard newspaper.
All right, moving on from the Vanguard, active to compete globally. That's the Nation this morning. Leaders pledge commitment to integration and cooperation. Petrol subsidy removal desirable, says APC chair Adamu. We also see here inflation be and Emmanuel Swegmo. President set to unveil security plan, says Shetima. $50 million power plant to drive Lagos economy. Plan private sector driven. Okay? APC's NEC holds on Wednesday. Violent forces Olubadan to suspend Egungun Festival. Service chiefs face reps panel. Page 10 is where you can find details. And that's all on the front page of the Nation.
Well, our next stop this morning is This Day newspaper. And of course, the kicker there stays Tinubu misinterpreting the law on 25% FCT votes can lead to action. Failed to prove alleged non-compliance, puts actual vote score at 8,800,369. And that you can find on page 3 of This Day newspaper. And of course, NNPC upstream plans 40 billion barrels reserve by 2036, investment in pipeline network. That's on page 6 of This Day newspaper. CBN raises tenure limit for banks chief executive to 12 years. That's on another kicker. Then, of course, the writer says new governance code emphasizes gender diversity on companies board, sets cumulative tenure limit of directors of the same bank to 24 years. mandates banks to disclose risk management policies in annual financial statements. That you can find on page 5 of the This Day newspaper. Still on the front page of This Day newspaper, you would also find on President's alleged order at Damo Omisere resign. On President's alleged order at Damo Omisere resigns. And of course, the writer says APC may propose midterm elective convention at NEC. APC may convene or propose midterm elective convention at NEC. And of course, the last story we'll take today, Senate, $800 million not loan. It's World Bank support for vulnerable Nigerians. And of course, that story is on page 8 of This Day newspaper.
All right, I think that's our very last paper for this morning. And of course, there's a plethora of stories. Today's subsidy is looking at big things. The relief of two-pronged, what's that? Federal government targets two-pronged relief for workers, provide palliatives, pay 200. Okay, so of course, you know that we've been having a conversation by NLC TUC asking for a 300% pay rise for workers within Nigeria. And now we're seeing the federal government is targeting two-pronged relief for workers to provide palliatives and pay 200,000 minimum.
Well, during the campaigning period, we know that the likes of the Labour Party presidential candidate has spoken about the need for minimum wage to be increased. I think he said that then 100,000 naira was possible across board. But then looking at 300,000 naira, yeah, a lot of persons would argue that it can be achievable. I mean, going by what Nigeria has in terms of our resources, but then placing that side by side with the cost of governance, placing that side by side with our debt burden as a country, is it achievable? Are the leaders willing to make the sacrifice? Recall shortly after his inauguration, President Ahmed Bola Tinubu did say that Nigerians need to make sacrifices. That will, when he visited Lagos for the Salah celebration, of course, Nigerians reacted to that. Now, in the spirit of making sacrifices, many experts, leadership analysts have said one of the things Nigeria needs to do, in fact, the whole African continent needs to do, is to cut the cost of governance, cut the expenses. When these people are not ready to cut the expenses, will we ever get to a point where the average Nigerians get to have access to what he truly desires or needs to function effectively? So for us to be able to have a government at the state level, a government at the federal level that is able to pay the kind of minimum wage that will to a large extent help Nigerians, there needs to be a drastic implementation in terms of cutting costs of governance. They also have to be that political will. Recall as we speak, not all the states are even paying the 30,000 minimum wage. True. So if states have not been able to implement the 30,000 naira minimum wage after years of its, being passed into law,
maybe, of course, they couldn't get to the 300% increase. But then the federal government is saying that they are going to empower state government to be able to pay this 200,000 naira minimum wage. But another issue here, naira too small to ease the pains of fuel subsidy removal. Let's not forget that if you do the math, divide 8,000 naira times 30 days a week, it means the federal government is asking each family to spend about 5 shares of pure water right now in the country. Of course, 8,000 naira is too small in realistic terms, and that's a serious case on the front page of Vanguard this morning. Okay, so there's a couple of things here. Illegal firearms charge. Lawyers and activists demand Emefiele's immediate release. That's been going on, and that case was in court on Friday. This is troubling, Francis.
Well, it's a bit of not a surprise to a lot of persons. I recall shortly after the issues between the embattled CBN governor and the federal government led by Ahmed Bola Tinubu, a lot of questions have been, been asked. Unless the DSS has, what to hold him accountable, then he should be released and set free. And then, of course, there were orders barring the DSS from further arresting him. as a result of any of the allegation leveled against him. And if they were to charge him, they should go ahead. And of course, we didn't see much coming from the DSS. So many activists are of the opinion that Emefiele is probably being witch hunted, for all that he did during the electioneering period. I mean, recall the whole Naira redesign policy, and what Emefiele told Nigerians was the aim of it, to ensure that politicians do not get to buy votes and all of that. And then it's been a bit of a debate whether or not during his tenure as the CBN governor, Nigeria had actually seen development in some key areas. Economics analysts would say yes, Emefiele to a large extent during his tenure was able to hold down the country during its worst hit economic downturns, and of course should be given commendation. That of course in no way doesn't take away the fact that he also made Nigerians to go through the worst kind of suffering during the cash crunch policy that we saw. So many Nigerians are in as much as calling for justice to be served, calling for investigations, proper investigation and prosecution, they're also calling for his fundamental rights to not be infringed upon. And of course, many activists and human rights lawyers said, whipping up a sentiment of illegal arms possession is just one of the flimsy excuses. It's probably the worst flimsy excuse that the DSS can come up with as a means of holding him down.
Well, that's that for that. But let's go to the 10th Assembly. 110 billion naira is in the works for bulletproof cars for the Senate President and other senators. And Sarah is calling out the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, in Nigeria and most parts of Africa. We are saying that to cushion subsidy removal, families are going to be given 8,000 naira. But for our senators, we are going to be voting 110 billion naira to buy them bulletproof cars. I mean, there's a lot to consider here. If your hands are clean, who is pursuing you that we need to use 10 billion to acquire bulletproof cars for senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? More waste. Don't forget that out of the 500 billion naira that has been secured by the federal government and the presidency to serve as palliatives, they have decided also to set aside 70 billion naira for the house. How much exactly is it costing us as a nation to have, a National Assembly and the House of Representatives? Is it really worth it, or we are driving our nation aground by how much we are spending? But I mean, this is where we are going to let newspaper rest.
But look past going down the path of their predecessors and not looking at the plight of Nigerians. 8,000 naira cannot take a single person past 1 week. A single person past 1 week. That is the worst case scenario.
We're saying if a person is very prudent.
Yes.
No, we're even talking of a single person.
A single
not
person.
A family.
Worst case scenario. A single person. 1 week at the most. And then you're sending that to a family while this large sum of money is being budgeted. I mean, what's the need for a bulletproof? What are the security there for? What are the escorts there for? What are the details there for? If we have a look,
Nigerian.
I mean, one thing is definitely certain. If our leaders pay more attention to ensuring that the people have what they need,
the country will be
there
safer
will be
for all
no
of us.
need for insecurity. I mean, most of the insecurity actions are happening goes down to the lack of job. It goes down to the lack of food on people's table. It goes down to different agitations, which of course boils down to the inability of our leaders to put in place what in a government official nobody's going to think about, taking into arms and all of that. So if anything needs to be done, Nigerians would love for our leaders to actually channel those amount of money into investing in the average Nigeria, in the Nigeria itself, so we have a better society.
Well, let's just leave Spotlight Dailies there for this morning. Of course, still on the heel of subsidy removal, palliatives and all that, there's a lot of reaction going on by Nigerians and civil society organizations. That's going to be the focus of our conversation this morning, as we'll be joined by our guest virtually. We take this break, and when we return, Rise and Shine continues.
exist only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect
every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday, 2
stories on how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the...
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Welcome back. This is still Rise and Shine, and we're coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. Of course, a lot is happening in the country. On the 29th of May, we swore in a new president. The removal was going to be taking effect immediately. And of course, that caused a rouse in the country as we immediately began to see price of petroleum products spike, and cost of living also has gone up almost immediately. Most Nigerians are suffering on monetary access to be able to provide palliatives to Nigerians. Now, the cause of discussion says 8,000 naira will be disbursed to about 150 million Nigerians, vulnerable Nigerians, of course. 20 billion naira has also been earmarked for members of the National Assembly. And this is causing a lot of questions. Now, human rights squarely into this issue with me this morning is Otsueko Franklin, Akwa Ibom State Shrine Director, joining me virtually this morning. Good morning, Otsueko. Good to have you on Rise and Shine.
Good morning, Uyai. Good to be with you.
Good to have you. How is Uyo this morning? Is it raining on your side of the city, or is just plain sunrise?
Well, where I reside, so far there is no rain, but the weather looks.
Already having given the background that I have, we've also seen that the organized labor has strongly rejected President Bola Tinubu's plan to distribute 500 billion as palliative to 12 million Nigerian households. Of course, they are saying that the cash distribution is not what Nigerians need to survive the prevailing economic hardship. When you heard about this particular palliative moves by the federal government, how much it's going to be costing us and how much will be given to families, what were your thoughts about this, Otsueko?
I just laughed over it because I think we joke too much in Nigeria. 500 billion naira palliative, and out of which that will be given to 12 million families, and 67 naira if you divide this figure, and that will be paid for 6 months. Now, what can 267 fare your way to your workplace?
Absolutely not.
A tricycle operator will scarcely accept 267 naira for a drop, a distance of less than less than 1 kilometer, and because they could be. So you see that we joke too much, and the government, the proposal also went further to allocate 70 billion to less than 500 Nigerians. 70 billion naira to be given to less than 500 Nigerians. That is 109 senators and 350 Federal House of Rep members. So if you add 109 plus 350, that will be giving you less than 500 Nigerians, and they are going home with 70 billion. See how we joke. So the government is that it is aimed at, bettering or making them feel better in their work for making laws. You could see that there are school people who go to school with chairs, plastic chairs. The reason why they deserve the 70 billion naira. And one of the lawmakers within the National Assembly complex.
But that's because there's an allegation that they have to renew those things every now and then. That's because there's an allegation that once an assembly is done, they need to renew, bring in new instruments and new, what did we call it now, equipment for them to work with, wasting more money. So it's not like there were no seats for the 9th assembly.
Asking them today. That is the question I asked them. And I even reminded them that most of the constituencies where they are from, the public schools have decayed. The school people don't have chairs to sit. They go to the schools from there for themselves. When I was in school, my parents built me a locker and kept. A federal house member, a federal lawmaker, a senator will be a country that is struggling with economy, with a harsh economy, that is struggling with insecurity, that is struggling with food scarcity. And so give a household 267 naira, and you call it palliative, and you expect Nigeria to clap for you under this harsh economy. Now, what is our own suggestions? What the Center for Human Rights and Accountability Network is advising the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to do is to stop forthwith any attempt to share 267 naira to Nigerians. Because number one, you don't even know how you got this data of knowing this poorest of the poor and knowing these 12 million households. How did you even get to that point? How did you simply put names of people that they want, and they will take this money home and share it to their political cronies? And because they voted them, it will become a party thing. What the president should do would put this money into modular refineries. If you are able to refine petrol and you have enough of it, and you pump more petrol into the market, it will force down the prices of pump price. And that will also, considering the bad road network, considering the cost of transport, the petrol will now build those costs on the item, and that will make the item become expensive. So what the president should do is to use this 500 billion to plug it into our economy. Fix the federal highway to Port Harcourt, because the road is not motorable. From Akwa Ibom down, you want to drive down, once you enter the Horicon Bridge down to Eleme, down to One, that road is completely, dilapidated. You can't even drive through. If you are going from the Calabar to highway axis to enter Omaya, that road is unmotorable up to Calabar. So what the federal government and then taking huge amount of money and giving to the federal house members, you should add this money and take it to fix our federal highways. Take this money, support the farmers, give out loans. Once you have enough of petroleum products, the market forces will force down the prices of pump, and then the petrol can now go down to the barest minimum, and then you now see that the cost of sources. We don't think this is meant to serve Nigerians. It is only meant to loot and further plug us into more hardship. That is what we view, and we advise the president to stop this attempt of further fertilizers be released to farmers. He has declared
state of emergency on food security.
All these are things for a 10 million household, and to give 70 billion naira to federal lawmakers. Yeah. That is Senate and the rest members, less than 500 Nigerians for all.
But then let's look at wastefulness in governance, because the numbers are really high. We have 40 billion naira to, those offices. We also see, of course, this in all is making it 110 billion naira for 465 legislators to be able to have bulletproof cars, and you're still taking 70 billion. And this is aside the budget just to run a National Assembly alone is taking the country way more finance than necessary. And when we talk about civil society organizations, prefer, just plead with the president. Serap oftentimes will take the federal government and the president to court, National Assembly, and make them change their ways. What are your thoughts with regards to this? Because this administration is just coming in, and the amounts of monies voted for them to be comfortable to make unfriendly policies for Nigerians is already alarming.
I think we are in a democratic society and will allow us to also contribute to how our welfare is managed. We wanted a government that will understand that it is constitutional, it is in the constitution, that the welfare and security of its citizens is paramount. Who is barely 100 days in office, and he is yet to constitute his cabinet. Likewise, some state governors who are also sworn. This particular loan was already budgeted for,
initiated,
and gotten by the past administration of President Muhammad. Carry out these policies, but we protested and asked that he should allow it for the incoming government of Bola Tinubu. Now, having said this, the government should review. That is why we are calling for a review. You don't need to allow Nigerians to go on the street like you are asking. When a government refuses to listen to Nigerians, it leaves us to resort to self-help, which is taken to the street. You recall the issue of the NSAS. You recall how it almost 19 wahala coming out from the insecurity we are still facing in the northeast and in the southeast. And so we don't think that holding the country knows that Mr. President was ill-advised. Mr. President will review this policy, because further, push Nigerians 50 years backward from where the government met us in 2015.
But some people are of the opinion.
The high rate of inflation.
But some people are of the opinion Muhammadu Buhari's 8 years in office is contrast. And some people want to accept the deeds of the Buhari-led administration, or strong voices in the country kicking against the initiative raised by the national 110 billion naira for themselves is illegal, and Nigerians are being taken for granted, and the fact that it might begin to instigate were sent from United Nations, from the federal government, from different organizations. One thing we experienced was the fact that of the 500 billion that will be. I think the internet is making this morning. Of course, you can join the conversation, share your thoughts with us at the reach us, and we will take your feedback and ask that an entertainer has poked holes in this particular initiative. All right, Otuekong, you can go on with your thoughts.
The time that Nigerians will ever miss the government of President Muhammadu Buhari. When we get to that, may it never come to that time. That's my prayer. Even when we were in the hands of the previous administration, and So Nigerians have voted. That is why when after elections we said no, those who have lost should rather go to court, protest because of election. So did the government arrive at the 12 million during that COVID-19 crisis? Nigerians, were starved. So it was supposed to be given to the poorest amongst the poorest of the poor. And when I was told that they are distributing, they will carry it, and that is what was shared, I laughed over it. So I think that people will just sit somewhere and, like I have said, see it as a party in the center, the one in the state, like the school feeding program. The party solo from the state government. They have said that the entire thing is a scam. Who knows who is the poorest of the poor? Nigerians, with all our everything we have, yet the Nigerian government is unable. Who are 12 million households?
But then the federal government have 150 million people living beneath poverty line. Who exactly, is going to be capable?
The government should rather, like that is what we have been saying. The federal government should, instead of going a program, because that is the only way you can go. That is the only way that can affect every. Talking about the federal house members who need bulletproof car, have a bulletproof car. I believe that the National Assembly should be made to become a part-time basis. After all, they sit either twice a week, Tuesdays and maybe so that anybody who is a federal house member can still be doing his private businesses. Here we don't have resources,
very valid,
and yet only a few
point.
Nigerians want to be the ones to hijack our resources under the name of being a federal house member. That is why you see the contest to becoming a federal house member become very, very thick, become very, very key. So they want to recoup what they have spent. So for them, it's a do or die.
Well, these are the sad tales. These are the very sad tales of things that we are seeing. I'll have you back sometime later to still look into some other aspects of these palliatives as will be given. Now, we are also expecting that in the next couple of days, the federal government will be showing us how they intend to reel out these 8,000 naira to the 12 million families for us to even see on the show, and for really breaking this down, from the eyes of the civil society organizations for us to understand. Thank you for your time with us on Rise and Shine this morning.
Thank you.
That the move by the National Assembly, Section 70 of the 1999 Constitution, that enumerates how the remuneration for, the National Assembly, constitutionally by the laws of the Federal Republic, they are contravening the ethics of their, office. Of course, these conversations can continue across our social media platforms, all of which you can find at spectrumtv.ng and also at Spectrum TV. Let's do this again tomorrow. Until then, my name remains Uyai Anekan. Enjoy the rest of your day.